Welcome back, everyone. Thank you for joining us. Good afternoon. We are glad that you're here. We're up to 749 subscribers, Scott. Did you know that?
Very cool. Yep.
What's
Thank you to
going
all
on?
those that have subscribed. And please, if you just have it in your, just any kind of a feeling about it at all, just hit the subscribe button. It doesn't cost you anything, right?
Tell a friend about it too. If
Yeah.
something interests you. Some
Yeah.
people are interested in health. Some people are interested in chemistry. Some are interested in outer space.
Yeah. Well, and hopefully this story today, this afternoon, will grab a lot of attention because this has been a big deal. This has been all over mainstream news. But this is kind of a cool story. We like this. We like space stories. So here we go.
I'm Steve.
And I'm Scott.
Together, we're Backyard Musing Science and Technology Channel.
Yep. And still in the locations we were in this morning and yesterday. And so but we'll be back in Apple Valley soon enough. So here we go.
So we're going to talk about the moon, but Scott, what's going on with Artemis on its way to the moon?
Yeah. So we had a little plumbing problem on there. And apparently the female astronaut, I hope I'm allowed to say that, female astronaut, is the repair plumber on board.
Oh,
so she's the one that's having to specialize in that. I don't know how she
what's
grew the
happening
short
with the
straw.
Plumbing, Scott?
Well, the toilet is not working, and
because the poo is getting frozen, right?
Well, I don't. We don't need to go into detail. You know,
the poo is getting frozen.
It might be lunchtime or dinner time for some folks, so we don't want to get into too much detail, but they're definitely having a plumbing problem, and I'm not talking about personal. I'm talking about functional toilet problems.
The one affects the other.
Yeah, absolutely. And I don't think we're going to talk about in this story, but that has kind of been at the forefront of some of these issues that they're having. Yeah. So, but this is a very cool story. Despite the problem with the plumbing.
Yep. Decades after being sealed away, Apollo-era lunar samples are revealing unexpected chemical signatures that challenge long-standing assumptions about the moon's composition. When NASA's final Apollo astronauts returned from the moon in 1972, some of the material they collected was sealed and set aside. Scientists hope that future generations equipped with better technology would be able to study these untouched samples in new ways. That moment has arrived. Would you like to know more?
Okay, a team led by a Brown University researcher has re-examined material from Apollo 17 and uncovered an unexpected chemical signal. Writing in the Journal of Geophysical Research, Planets on September 10th of last year, 2025, the scientists describe unusual sulfur compounds in rocks from the Taurus Littrow region. The volcanic material contains sulfur that is strongly depleted in sulfur 33 or 33S, one of the 4 stable sulfur isotopes. According to the team, these values are very different from what is typically measured in rocks on Earth. Okay.
Elements can carry unique fingerprints based on their isotope ratios, which reflect small differences in atomic mass. When 2 samples share the same pattern, it usually means they formed from the same source. Scientists have long known that Earth and the moon share similar oxygen isotope signatures. Because of that, many researchers assumed sulfur isotopes would also match. That expectation did not hold up in this case, said James Doughton, an assistant professor of Earth, Environmental, and Planetary Sciences at Brown and lead author of the study.
Okay, here's a quote. Before this, it was thought the lunar mantle had the same sulfur isotope composition as Earth. That's according to Doughton. And going on with the quote, that's what I expected to see when analyzing these samples, but instead we saw values that are very different from anything we find on Earth. Ooh, that must have been a really spine-tingling.
Yeah. The material Doughton studied came from a double-drive tube, a hollow metal cylinder pushed about 60 centimeters or 24 inches into the lunar surface by Apollo 17 astronauts Gene Cernan and Harrison Schmitt.
Okay. And I don't know if either one of those guys is still alive. I don't know. Maybe, but I don't know. After returning to Earth, NASA sealed the tube in a helium environment to keep it unchanged for future research. through the Apollo Next Generation Sample Analysis, or ANGSA program.
In recent years, NASA has opened these samples to scientists through a competitive selection process with support from Lunascope, Brown's Lunar Research Consortium. Dotton used secondary ion mass spectrometry to measure sulfur isotopes. This high-precision technique was not available when the samples first arrived on Earth.
So this is almost like a time capsule then, right? They kept this thing.
Yeah, it's like how
50 years.
DNA cracks cold cases, like 50 years later.
Exactly. He focused on portions of the core that appeared to contain volcanic rock from deep within the moon. Quote, I was targeting sulfur that had a texture that would suggest it was erupted with the rock and had not added through a different process, he added.
The results were stunning, like Scott says. The isotope ratios differed far more than expected from anything seen on Earth. Quote, my first thought was, holy schmolies, that can't be right, Dotton said. So, Reggie? So we went back to make sure we had done everything properly, and we had. These are just very surprising results. Dotton suggests two main explanations. One possibility traces back to the moon's early environment. Sulfur that interacts with ultraviolet light in a thin atmosphere can develop low 33S levels. Scientists think the moon once had a brief atmosphere that could have allowed this type of chemistry to occur.
If so, it would point to a process that moved material from the surface down to the lunar interior. Quote, that would be evidence of ancient exchange of materials from the lunar surface to the mantle. And that's according to Dotton. Going on with the quote, on Earth, we have plate tectonics that does that. But the moon doesn't have plate tectonics. So this idea of some kind of exchange mechanism on the early moon is exciting. Okay.
Another explanation looks even further back to the moon's origin. The leading theory proposes that a Mars-sized body called Theia, which we've talked about, collided with Earth, producing debris that later formed the moon. We talked about that. If Theia had a very different sulfur composition, that signature may still be preserved inside the lunar mantle.
For now, the data do not clearly favor one explanation over the other. Dotton hopes that future studies, including comparisons with samples from Mars and other planetary bodies, will help resolve the mystery. Understanding these isotope patterns could offer new clues about how the moon and the rest of the solar system came to be. Well, we already know how that happened, but it's all good. So, but anyway, very cool.
Did. Yep.
Yeah. Yep. Worlds and worlds and worlds. Okay, there we go. Very cool story. Next time, maybe we'll talk about the toilet. So
maybe. All right, folks. Thanks for joining us. We'll catch you on the next one.
Take care, everyone. Thanks. Okay.